Our Decision 2022 special coverage continues right now on this hour, where we now switch up to English but still continue the same thread of conversation, which is integrity and leadership. And in studio I shall be having a panel. I already have one of the panelists here. That's Eric Ngumbi, who's the head of corporate affairs at the EACC. That's corporate affairs and communications at the EACC. And we're expecting Charles Kanjama, who's a lawyer, as well as Sheila Masinde, Executive Director of Transparency International Kenya. We shall be getting to that in a bit, but we're not just having the conversation in Nairobi, we are having this conversation beyond our borders, and we have Lois Wangoi standing by with various wananchi in Eldoret, the county of Uasin Gishu, and Zacchaeus Mosame in Kakamega County with wananchi as well on the same. So just to get us started, to get a sense of what the people feel about integrity and leadership, let's now begin with Lois Wangoi. Lois, what are the people of Eldoret saying about this?
Good evening, Dan Mwangi. Tonight, Eldoret, Uasin Gishu, and indeed the entire North Rift region continues to count down to about 23 days to Decision 2022. A day is slated for August the 9th, where the residents of Eldoret will join the rest of the country in making that crucial decision at the ballot box under Decision 2022. This evening, I am interacting with the residents here in Eldoret town, and we want also to touch base with them and understand what are the issues that will inform their decisions come August 9th, and with a focus on matters integrity, to see if that is a key component as they narrow down to their leaders of choice. Tutaanza na mama Women First. Asante sana mama kuungana nasi katika NTV. Uchaguzi karibu unafika. Tuambie wewe kama mama, ni mambo gani utakuwa unaangalia ili kuamua huyu nitampa kura yangu, lakini huyu nitamnyima kura yangu?
Nitachagua mheshimiwa mwenye ninajua atatusaidia kama hapa sokoni tunaumia. Tunataka mheshimiwa mwenye nikichagua kesho hata nikikuja kuuza vitu zangu sitakuwa na kushikwa sayota ama kukimbia. Nitauza kwa amani.
Alafu mama, kuna hili swala la integrity ama maadili ama mtu kuwa na behavior nzuri, ambayo katiba inasema kama mtu atakuwa na masuala ya integrity, si vizuri asimame katika kiti cha siasa ama kiti cha kufanyia wananchi kazi. Wewe utakuwa unaangalia hilo swala ukifika pale debeni kuweza kuchagua viongozi?
Nitaangalia kwa sababu ninaweza mchagua na baadaye atudhulumu. Eri niwache amalizane na kesi zake kwanza. Nichague mwenye najua ana kesi yoyote. Yes.
Asante. Tupate mama mwingine, mpishe tu hapa ili tuongee na mwingine. Mama, habari yako na habari ya mtoto?
Niko mzima, mtoto wangu ako salama. Kwa majina yangu ni Abigail Rasoa Kakai au mshefa wa LD.
Abigail, kura inakaribia, ni siku kama 23 hivi. Wewe ni nini utakuwa unachunguza? Ni nini utatilia mkazo sana ili kusema huyu nitampa kura yangu?
Mimi kulingana na mimi, ninataka mtu mwenye anaongoza vizuri. Yaani akiingia kwa kiti at least atatimiza matakwa ya wananchi. Hivyo.
Alafu mama, kuna hili swala la integrity. Integrity ni kumaanisha mtu ambaye hana doa lolote ama hana makosa katika utendakazi wake kwa kazi za hapo amefanya kabla ya kutafuta hicho kiti. Utakuwa unaangazia swala hilo ama wewe kuna mengine ambayo ni muhimu zaidi kwako?
Kulingana na mimi mambo kusema integrity, watu wanasema mtu ni mfisadi, ameiba, amefanya hii. Kulingana na mimi hiyo si shida yangu, kwa sababu hata wale wenye wanasema aliipa, hata huenda nao waliipa. Sasa mimi nitachagua mtu kulingana na kazi yenye anafanya na sera zake. Mimi sitachagua mtu ati aliipa ama ako nayo. Mimi ninachagua mtu kwa sababu ninajua akienda kuniongoza ataongoza watu vizuri. Hiyo si shida ya kusema ati ufisadi ama integrity. Mimi kwangu ni kuongoza nchi.
Asante sana. Dan, we have gotten two women. We are very lucky tonight. Now we get to the men. Tutaanza kwa majina yako. Tuambie mama hapa amesema swala la integrity yeye haangalia. Awe mwizi awe si mwizi, yeye bora mtu anaweza fanya kazi. Wewe swala la integrity utazingatia?
Mimi naitwa Tarus Cheboriot. Swala la integrity kwangu ndio angalia, sababu itafanya nchi yetu tusiendelee. Kama mtu amechakuliwa na hesi angalia watu wake kuchunga ufisadi na kuchunga watu kwa njia nzuri, tutarudi nyuma. Kama mtu akiambiwa atengeneze barabara achukue muda, hata tengeneza kwa wakati, tuko na shida. Kama sasa tuseme kwa bei ya mbolea, tungetaka subsidize fertilizer because we are farmers in Eldoret. We are all farmers in Uasin Gishu. We like a better price in fertilizers. We like a better price in farming fuel. And we like a very good country where we can work and have a better life. Yeah, thank you.
Very well put. Pengine tupate mzee. Mzee, maoni yako, swala hili la integrity, utendakazi wa mtu kwa siku za hapo nyuma ziangaliwe, ama wewe ni maswala gani utakuwa ukizingatia unapompa huyu kura na kumnyima yule?
Wacha nianze na integrity. Integrity nataka mtu mwenye ana dosari. Kama mtu amehukumiwa ama ana kesi ambayo imetajwa adversely against him or her, huyo mtu step aside kwanza. Nataka mtu ambaye hana dosari, kwa maana ukiwa mtu hana integrity hata lolote inaweza kukwama kila kitu. Alafu usitaki kusema sana jua integrity, kwa maana Mungu ndiye anaona zaidi ndani kuliko mwanadamu. Lakini kilichoko muhimu, mimi nataka maneno mbili tu. Ya kwanza, mtu mwenye ataleta amani. Hapa Uasin Gishu ni kama kule dunia mzima. We have got all types of people. Na every human being is in Eldoret. Kenya is cosmopolitan. Nataka kiongozi anapenda watu wote, hana ubaguzi. Mimi ni Mkale, lakini mimi sitaki mtu anabagua wengine. Kwa maana sitaki nibaguliwe niende Nyeri ama Kisumu. Haya, ya mwisho, nataka mtu ambaye ataimarisha uchumi Eldoret. Ngoja mimi namaliza, unaniambia nikate kwa nini? Haya, kwa mfano, ngoja nimalize. Kwa mfano, ngoja. Kwa mfano, hizi kulikuwa na factory mingi 1990s na 1980s, lazima imarishwe ili endelee. Mimi naitwa Samuel Samoei, Mungu awabariki.
Asante Dan Mwangi. Samuel Samoei's comments are wrapping up the expectations of the residents of Uasin Gishu, and really them talking to us and giving us a perspective of the conversations that they continue to have amongst themselves and within one's self as they approach August 9th for their decision 2022. Back to you in Nairobi, Dan.
Thank you very much, Lois, and some very interesting takes there from the people of Eldoret. And you can clearly see Kenyans have issues that they want and need to be addressed as soon as possible. And we'll be getting the comments from our panelists in just a bit. But first, take our first short break. Then we come and have a conversation on this panel. Stay with us. Welcome back to this broadcast, and now without much ado we just get into the conversation here with my panelists. I have Eric Ngumbi, the Head of Corporate Affairs and Communication at the EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and we have Charles Kanjama, who is not new to our studios, not new to your screens. He's an advocate and a lot more. He's one of those guys with the CVs that can be on a scroll. Karibu sana. Thank you. I want to begin with you, Eric, briefly. Yes. During the Voices of the People, just before, from Eldoret, there's a lady who said she doesn't care about whether someone has, been implicated in illegality or something unethical, because she's saying even those who are accusing them are probably pure meiba. It's almost like saying what you guys championed for doesn't really matter for her when she's going to vote. Okay. What's your comment on that?
What that lady is saying definitely represents what many other Kenyans think, and that to us shows that there is a problem. There's a lot that we still have to do as a country to make sure that citizens become active participants and not spectators in the efforts towards implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. But again, we have to appreciate where the rain began beating us. Where is the problem in terms of implementation? And I see 4 problems which I could consider obstacles to the effective enforcement of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. One is that even though the Constitution has set very high standards on the integrity of the people occupying our offices, the statutory frameworks that are used to operationalize those provisions, especially under Chapter 6, are weak and not clear. Number 2, we have what I would call jurisprudential confusion. At the moment, we do not have any court judgment or ruling that authoritatively and conclusively tells us what the integrity threshold is. The decisions that we have from the litigation that has been done are contradictory and incoherent. So there is a problem there. Number 3, as an obstacle, we have politicized the enforcement of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Our bad political culture as a country is an obstacle. finally, citizen apathy. And that answers the question that you put to me. Citizens of this country have not yet occupied the very elevated position that the Constitution of 2010 gave them. I would say that the people of Kenya have actually surrendered their sovereign power to politicians instead of doing what is expected under Article 1, that is to delegate and continuously monitor how that sovereign authority is being exercised. And the election that we are going to presents an opportunity for citizens to analyze, evaluate the performance of the people they delegated their sovereign power to, and they see how they have performed. If they have not performed well, remove them from office. But again, what we are seeing from what citizens have said there, it means that we still have a lot more to do, and that is why institutions such as EACC and IEBC continue to conduct civic empowerment to ensure that citizens realize that they are a key stakeholder in this process. And that means that we also have other actors. The church, that is the custodian of morality, has a duty in this, the civil society, the media. But again, even after we talk about those problems, I must also acknowledge that some good work has been done. In fact, the fact that we are seated here discussing this is evidence that Kenyans are beginning to realize that electoral integrity is important. When we see EACC boldly flagging out 241 aspirants and telling the country, wait a minute, these people have questions that should be interrogated before they are allowed to vie. That's a good thing. When we see people going to court, we have had several petitions, people questioning the integrity of some candidates to participate in this process. That's a good thing. So you are able to see good moves, and I consider this to be a war. Implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution is a war against corruption. Okay. It is a war against impunity, war against bad governance, and in my view, a war is a war in every sense. And a war is a process. It is not a one-day venture, maybe not even a 5 years venture. What matters in a war, in my view, is whether at every stage of that war, you are making progress. So the question is, are we making progress in the implementation of Chapter 6 of the Constitution? I would say yes, and give an example of what happened yesterday in court. Yes, and we'll get to that with the Mike Sonko situation, and we actually have an interview that we will be airing at 9 p.m. I want to bring in Kanjama on the same. He's raised a couple of pertinent issues in regards to the challenge of implementation when it comes to this thing called Chapter 6 that is easier to refer to than to implement, it seems. What in your view is the reason why what is holding us from actually achieving the spirit of Chapter 6 of the Constitution?
In relation to elections?
Yeah, generally, then we can go into elections.
Okay, so generally there is a tension within the Constitution between two values. They are both important, but they tend to work in tension to one another. One is the value of moral hygiene that requires high standards of ethics and integrity in our leadership, state officers, in public officers, and indeed in all citizens. So Chapter 6 focuses on state officers, and it sets out the high standards of ethics and integrity. That's the moral hygiene. That's the first value. We want them to be as good, as unimpeachable as possible. Then there is another value in the same Constitution, which is found in Article 47, Article 48, and Article 50 of the Constitution. This is the chapter on the Bill of Rights. This is fairness in administrative actions, fair hearing. Don't condemn someone without giving them an opportunity to be heard and to enjoy their rights of due process of the law. So because of these rights, that you don't want to condemn people without allowing them an opportunity to defend themselves in a court of law, then you have a conflict. On one hand, you have Chapter 6. You have seen someone engaging in corruption. On the other hand, the criminal case that will determine that he was corrupt, or the civil case, might be dragging for 3, 4, 5 years. So what do you do during that period? Do you strip the person of their rights? They have not yet been convicted, and even if they've been convicted, they have filed an appeal. The appeal has not yet been heard and determined. So you see there are two values, and the values are in tension. Both of them are important, but they are in tension against each other. And demarcating the boundaries, demarcating how they interact with each other, how they marry with each other, is not a simple issue. Sometimes it is determined on case-by-case basis. The courts have tried to come up with principles that will generally guide state organs, constitutional commissions like EACC, like IEBC, the Elections Commission, and the Anti-Corruption Commission, and so on. But it's not something that is just easy and obvious. That's why there is a challenge.
Okay. So in regards to this election, just to even now be a bit more specific, we have the ruling, the judgment that what the Supreme Court, pronounced itself on yesterday in regards to Mike Sonko, where it upheld his impeachment and, first of all, legally, because this is, this is an area that is not usually as black and white as many may think. Oh, sasa, impeach, end of the road for him. Is it really the end of the road for Mike Mbuvi Sonko?
Let me answer and say not necessarily.
Okay.
And this might surprise people, because in relation to elections, there is again that tension between the need for moral hygiene, the highest standards of ethics and integrity in our leaders, but you also have on the other side political rights and free and fair elections that require access to the voters. So what happened in the case of Mike Mbuvi Sonko is that under Article 99 and Article 193 of the Constitution, the ones that set the standards for qualification to run as a candidate in any election in Kenya, they prescribe that you must meet the minimum ethical, moral, and educational requirements. In paragraph 2 of those articles, they say that if you do not meet certain requirements, if you are found to have failed to meet certain requirements in a legal process, you will be disqualified. Then paragraph 3 of those articles says, however, the disqualification will only take effect after you've exhausted your mechanism of appeal or review. So Sonko went to the court in Mombasa and he said, IBC has denied me my rights to be a candidate on the ground that I was impeached, but I challenged that impeachment in the High Court. The High Court rejected my challenge. I challenged it again in the Court of Appeal on appeal. The Court of Appeal rejected my challenge. Then I'm in the Supreme Court. My challenge has not been exhausted. So the High Court agreed with Sonko. 3 judges of the High Court said that since Sonko has not exhausted his challenge to the impeachment process, clear him. And IBC cleared Sonko on Thursday. Then on Friday, the Supreme Court, in the space of 24 hours, they had the appeal, which had been pending before the Supreme Court, and they delivered a decision saying that Sonko was rightly impeached. And so the simple argument is, now that Sonko was rightly impeached, that means he has exhausted his procedure, final appeal, because the Supreme Court is the final court in Kenya. But Sonko's lawyers could argue that the Supreme Court Act allows you 14 days to file a review against the decision of the Supreme Court. And we know that in the case of Martha Karua, when she ran for county governor in Kirinyaga and she lost, it was declared by IBC, she went to the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, back to the High Court, Court of Appeal. She reached the Supreme Court again. And when the Supreme Court refused to hear her, she went to the East African Court of Justice. And the East African Court of Justice said her rights had been violated in the fact that the court failed to deal substantively with her election petition. Now we've seen that the lawyers of Sonko have written a letter to the Supreme Court saying they want to appeal, supposedly, to the East African Court of Justice. So again, the question arises, has Sonko exhausted his right to seek review or appeal?
Actually, he today has said that he's got the option of the East African Court of Justice, or he can also go, he's also thinking about a review, because he's actually raised issues, kind of accusing the Chief Justice of some unfair kind of treatment.
Yes, and so the question is, if he still has another bullet, you know, his lawyers told the Supreme Court, this is the last bullet in the gun of Sonko. But now they've found another bullet. They've spun the revolver and found another bullet. Then the question becomes, if the process is still going on, does that mean that the High Court decision has to be complied with and Sonko has to be on the ballot on 9th of August? So it's not obvious. It's not straightforward. But what I would say is this. The decision of the Supreme Court did not overturn the decision of the High Court, because what was before the Supreme Court was a different question. It was a question of whether Sonko was rightly impeached. The decision that was in the High Court that was dealing with it in Mombasa was a question of whether Sonko should be on the ballot. So right now there's a directive by the High Court telling IBC, put Sonko on the ballot. Unless that directive is reversed, either by the High Court or by the Court of Appeal, then it seems that Sonko will have to be on the ballot.
There are two issues he has raised, which I think I should also comment on. Yeah?
So just let me just interrupt a bit, because I want you to get a fair chance. Not that we're using legal terminology. We need to take a short break, and if you comment now, I will rush you. So let's take a short break, and then we'll be back after this to get to hear your view on the same. Stay with us. Welcome back to our special edition of Decision 2022 as we run up to the elections. The 9th of August is just about 23 days away, and we're trying to do our best. We are doing our best, not trying. We're beyond trying. We're now doing our best to make sure that you have the best information you can get to make the most informed choices about the leaders that we choose as Kenyans. And before we just jump into the panel once again, I want us to get Zacchaeus Mosame, who's in the county of Kakamega, speaking to some people there just to get the sense of what they feel about leadership and integrity. Very briefly, Zacchaeus, maybe you could just take us through.
Good evening, Dan. We are in Kakamega here, like you rightfully mentioned. We are trying to get not all this issue of integrity among our leaders. That is showing that somebody has to be honest and with very high moral principles. Is that the case with our leaders? Let's try to get these sentiments from a number of residents here in Kakamega that will join me. Gentlemen, what do you make of this issue of integrity with our leaders?
Yeah.
Look at that camera.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Desterio Kumu. On the issue of integrity, Kenyans gave themselves a constitution, which chapter 6 gave us issues to do with integrity. But what you find in this country is that mostly the article is violated. Most of our leaders do not follow the constitution. Look at Article 75. It says that a leader's behavior, both in private and in public, should be in tandem with good standing and good morals. But look at our leaders. Look at what they speak on the platforms. Look at their behaviors both in private and in public. It doesn't measure up to what the constitution says. So in essence, it's like the chapter on leadership and integrity has been defiled within our leaders. And you see, the issue is, if you look at Article 76, is very clear on the issues of how a public or a state officer should conduct himself. One, this person is not supposed to take things like gifts and donations from the public beyond a given value. But most of our leaders are engaging in taking tokenism. The Article 77 is very clear that no leader should actually earn a salary other than what he's being paid by the state office. But you find most of our leaders are engaging in businesses, gainful employment, using their offices to confer to themselves a benefit. So ideally, in essence, this article is not being used. Our leaders don't follow the constitution. And apparently, the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya has gone ahead and made laws that have diluted the original intent of the constitution. They have gone ahead and actually massacred the chapter 6 of the constitution. So in essence, you find in this country, the matters to do with leadership and integrity are greatly defiled. For example, you see, like the article says, when a state officer retires, he is not supposed to do a job, state jobs like in 2 places. But look at this country. Somebody is appointed a chairman of a parastatal, again he's a chairman of a board of a school. Already those are more than 2 gainful employment. So in essence, to to us as Wananchi, we feel that this article is not really used well. Like, for example, the issue of impeachment. Our article is very clear. Article 75.3. It says once a state officer has been impeached, then this person ceases actually to hold public office. But today we are seeing leaders who have been impeached by the county assemblies, by the Senate. The courts have upheld their impeachment. Again, IBC is clearing them to run for office. So in essence, actually what we are saying, Chapter 6 of our Constitution is like it's there just superimposed to make the pages of the Katiba, but not really to be useful to us Kenyans.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'll have another one. Utaanza jina lako, angalia ile kamera kwa ufupi tu, tuelezee what do you make of this?
Kwa majina naitwa Elvis Malova, from Civil Society in Kakamega County. What I wish to tell Kenyans that on issues of integrity issues, we have a lot to tell the Kenyans about. If you look at Mumias Sugar, we have both local and politician who mishandled the issue, the money in Mumias Sugar. Then if you look at the issues concerning about integrity issues in Kenya, whereby we will find out most on 9th June. And on 9th June 2022, the anti-corruption released a list of 241 people, whereby they were not supposed to buy any seat as from there. If you look at, we will see Waiguru there, Mike Sonko there, among others. Even in Western here, we have a lot of people who have such kind of issues. But we need to tell our courts and anti-corruption that they need to be strict on that. Otherwise, if we don't go beyond that, we'll have issues in 2027. And then on that issue, on the same chapter, on chapter 6, we'll find that most of our leaders, they're putting their money, maybe they don't have certificates. We have issues of certificates, we have issues of a lot of finance, whereby they wanaeka pesa zao huko nje in terms of that. So haweki pesa yao hapa ndani. So we want to see anti-corruption which iko na meno ambayo inaweza saidia Kenyans. Asante.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Zacchaeus Masame. We'll be looking at the views that have been shared there by the people of Kakamega. Some of them, I mean, they actually sound quite knowledgeable on these issues, yeah. You know. And Wakili, don't worry, they will not come after your job. You have earned your stripes. And I'd like to welcome Sheila Masinde, who's the Executive Director of Transparency International in Kenya.
Thank you. Karibu
sana. And before we went for the break, we had just gotten into the biggest issue right now of the day in regards to integrity and leadership, which is Mike Sonko. And Eric was about to comment on the same. Yes. You know, is it the end of the road for him? He says no. Sonko himself says no.
I said not necessarily.
Not necessarily. You know, in some cases when it's not yes, it's no. But I hear you, Eric.
Yeah, there are two issues that Wakili raised, and I want to agree with him on the question of the apparent conflict in our constitution. On one hand, we have the political rights of the individual. On the other hand, we have the right of the citizens to a country that is led by people who meet constitutional standards. So how do we resolve that conflict? In the view of EACC, the overarching consideration should be public interest, public good. No wonder under Article 259, you know, those who drafted the Constitution did not even trust the implementers. They provided for how the Constitution is to be interpreted. Because in my view, the biggest problem is interpretation. Article 259 of this Constitution requires every person who is interpreting this Constitution, be it the court, quasi-judicial bodies like EACC, IBC and others, to interpret any provision of the Constitution in a manner that, one, contributes to good governance, a manner that advances the rule of law, and in a manner that permits development of the law.
Okay.
Those provisions are buttressed by Article 10, which binds every state organ and every state officer whenever they are interpreting the Constitution or any other policy. They are bound by the requirements on transparency, accountability, and good governance. So the question is, when we allow people who have been convicted because of stealing millions, when we allow people who have been removed from office because of governing in a manner that is outside the Constitution, are we contributing to good governance? Article 73 again talks about the need to recognize that the authority assigned to a state officer is a public trust. And that was emphasized by the Supreme Court yesterday when they said that Chapter 6 of the Constitution is not in vain. It has to be implemented. So authority that is assigned to a state officer must at all time be exercised in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people, a manner that inspires public confidence.
Okay, and
so I take you back there, if you allow me. If we allowed the people who are flagged out, because the issues that made ESCC, advise IBC in respect to those people are weighty issues. If those people were cleared and they proceed to be elected, does that contribute to good governance? Does it inspire public confidence? And the last one, I can give you an example. In the last elections, we flagged out 106 individuals. 80% of them were elected. 50% of them are seeking re-election. So when we talk about exhausting the avenues of appeal, we also have to be practical. Look at the realities of our country. While we appreciate that the judiciary is doing a good job, we also acknowledge that they have capacity challenges in terms of human resources, and that is why cases take years and years. So if one was to exhaust all the avenues of appeal, Dan and Tim, that individual would take up to 5 years, for instance, at the magistrate level. If they appeal in the High Court, another 3 to 4 years. Court of Appeal, another 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Supreme Court, other years. So you will have individuals who can serve for 3 terms, purporting to exhaust avenues of appeal. So in my view, we are supposed to get out of this legal quagmire and consider issues that concern mwananchi. And that would require us to invoke Article 259. That requires judicial courage. And I look forward to the day a judge or a bench of judges will boldly tell the country who meets these requirements and who does not.
Okay, I want to bring in Sheila on this, and something that comes out clear is that when it comes to Chapter 6, if I read part of it, there's some things which are not entirely tangible. If you say a state officer shall behave, whether in public or and official life, in private life or in association with other persons, in a manner that avoids C, demeaning the office the officer holds. Who defines, it's like an ethical, who defines what is right, so that we can say that, oh, now Sonko is not behaving right. At the time when he was still, I think, MP, when he was punching the walls, he has done the many hairstyles and he's been accused of not giving the office the decorum it deserves. Who defines that? So then we can say that they're following the law.
First of all, let me disagree with you that Chapter 6 has things that are not tangible. They are very tangible because it is based on, it needs the application of moral and ethical standards. And that's where we are not getting it. And that is why some institutions like IBC have decided to apply a criminal standard to it, and keep on running to Article 99 and 193, to claim that, you have to exhaust all appeal mechanisms, and until then, you can be cleared, considered for public office. Chapter 6 was really about morals and ethics, because it's something that, for the framers of the Constitution, felt that this is something that needs to guide us as a country. And by then, in many countries, and Wakili, you can, from your own reading of different laws across the world, can maybe attest to this. They don't have that chapter on leadership and integrity. But the issue of morals and ethics is so strong. Look at what happened in the UK with Boris Johnson, having to leave office for ethical reasons, and not necessarily criminal, but ethical issues. And there are many others, even in other parts of the world, where you are, accused of something, and here in Kenya, looking at how we look at things, you'd maybe say, this is so minute, let him just remain in office. But people leave offices for that thing. But here, someone is fighting and now claiming you want to fight up to the Supreme Court and other courts above. Yet you have already been caught as a judge, that you are removed from office in the right way. There are some, I think we're talking during the break around issues around convictions. People have already been convicted, but you still insist that you must remain in public office. There's something so ethically wrong about it. And I think from that particular history of this country. That's where the framers of this constitution came, that we needed to institute some decorum in public office. For me, it's all about decorum. You have been granted a public position. How do you ensure you act in a manner that draws respect to that position that you hold, brings honor? Because when you are in that public office, it is not just, say, if I was in a public office, not just Sheila in that office, but I'm representing other people. So you need to act in a manner that brings respect, brings honor, and and confidence.
And I'd want to take you up on something that you said, but we'll do it right after we get a break to know what's on the news highlights, which the news for 9 o'clock, which will be with Olive Barrows. We'll take a look at the highlights. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to our closing section of this discussion as we prepare to get to the news. And I want to just step back to Sheila. Excuse me. And you talked about, you should act in a way that upholds, the morals and all that about an office. But the question, who defines it? Because what is morally upright to you may not be morally upright to me. There's somebody who thinks looking at alcohol is the worst thing on earth. There's another one who says you can do it socially. Another one who doesn't mind getting drunk, etc. So who defines it so that we can say that, okay, you are doing wrong?
I think in society and as part of culture, we have what we call norms. And so it gets to a point where you're clear as a community, what is right or wrong.
But isn't that the space now politicians are dancing in?
Of course, but what I would go back to say about the ethics and morals, and perhaps it's also something that we need to think about seriously in this country, is that we don't have a shared understanding of that. And that is why it is becoming very acceptable that a politician will have different kinds of for me, alarming things on video, like we have seen with the former governor, and people would still consider, electing him. And we've seen some of the videos that have been shared. Or we've seen people involved, say, in brawls, but you still find it acceptable that that person can be, elected. Or you've had people make certain utterances, but you still find it acceptable that this person can still hold public office. And yet they have gone ahead and insulted and incited members of or citizens in this country. So I think that we as Kenyans may not have a shared understanding of what is right and wrong, and it's time to go back to get that moral compass. And for me, what I hold is that some serious behavior change process needs to take place in this country, but it has to start with a kind of education on our values. We already have it in our constitution and Article 10 and the principles of governance, things like transparency, accountability, but then there are other values in different spaces. But it's clear that in terms of values, as not things that we maybe may hold on to, but we need to have value learning and relearning for many of us, so that we can have a shared understanding of what a leader should be, for them to be considered for public office. Because if we are arguing about what is right or wrong, then it tells you that there's a problem. Then it means that we may not be able to call out people when they don't act in a proper way, particularly when people are holding public office and people that other Kenyans are looking up to for guidance and leadership. But that said, I believe that Kenyans, when we in a few weeks, when we go to the ballot, I'm still calling on Kenyans because we tried this process in terms of vetting from early on with the political parties and urge them to ensure that they give us credible leadership in line with the Political Parties Act, which requires vetting in accordance with Chapter 6. We've tried with our institutions and asked them to ensure that what they give us are credible people onto the ballot. And we also had our hopes in the judiciary in regard to not just Sonko, but there are many others who clearly should not be on the ballot. People who have been convicted, other people who have been removed from office or been asked to stay away from their office or facing other charges of corruption and other offenses. But they're on the ballot. But we're asking Kenyans, you're the last line of defense in regard to Chapter 6, so you need to make the right decision and get the right leadership for this country. Because even if we are to move forward progressively, and as you have said, said and others have said, get clarity on Chapter 6, get laws that speak to Chapter 6 and enable a full implementation of Chapter 6. We will not get it with the kind of leaders that we're seeing out here, the 40% so-called who are said to, not be clean. We will not get it. So we need to get a clean set of leadership who can give us the laws that will give us clarity on Chapter 6.
All right, allow me to just stop you there, because I think it's the perfect punchline, to be honest, where we have the rallying call to the voters who are watching, which is, the reason why we're having these conversations here. And unfortunately, time has moved faster than we could. But I'd like to just thank each of you for making time. We have Charles Kanjama, who's a lawyer, an advocate, that is. We have Eric Ngubi, the head of corporate affairs at the ESCC, and Sheila Masin, the executive director of Transparency International Kenya. Thank you for joining us on this discussion. We look forward to having more of this with you guys here, so that we can ensure that on the 9th of August we have quality votes. My name is Dan Mwangi. After this, we have Olive Barrows coming up with a bulletin. NTV Weekend Edition starts in just a bit. Stay with us. Good evening.